Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody. Good to be back. Good to have
Yes,
Don back on our side of the world.
I am now back on North American continent. I have spent 2 weeks in Japan and Korea, so that the travel schedule basically had us cover the last 3 weeks that couldn't do the show. Probably the longest stretch, but we're back. We're back and enjoying it. And um, yeah, I don't know. This trip has developed. Now this is 2 years in a row we've done this, which was never my intention, was to do back to back trips like this, but things kind of fell into place and kind of necessity of things like that. But the more I go, the more I kind of want to go back. But if you've ever traveled, anybody who's ever traveled overseas like that, it is such a slog.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
we 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 flew from Dulles Airport to Dallas Fort Worth, and then caught a plane to Korea. So going out, it takes you 24 plus hours door to door. You're tired, and
Yeah,
in reverse course, it's a little less time coming back, it's a little faster, but you're still tired. I mean,
yeah,
we're still not quite sure what happened to the schedule on the return because we're basically doing the same thing. But I guess in the last year, American Airlines changed their schedule when they're flying out of Incheon, Korea. So, and everything and all the connections. So, I mean, we didn't land until 11:30 on, what was it, Friday night or whatever, Thursday night. And so, by the time we got our car, it was, and everything, get the luggage in our car, was, and got home, it was like 1 a.m. It was like, and then you're just totally discombobulated.
right.
So
So, what was the
I,
coolest thing you saw?
the coolest thing I saw, ooh, good question. Um, I don't know. I guess in a sense, so my cousins, I met my cousins in Japan for the first time in 56 years. So I have not seen these particular cousins since, since I was 10 years old, or just about 10 years old. Uh, the fact that we're still around is a testament in of itself, because they are actually older than I am. Uh, so, the one cousin who had actually lived with us for a year, she's 77. So, it was like, oh, I was definitely pushing the envelope there, but I was glad to see them. They took us sightseeing. The thing about when you go, so that was in Japan, right? So when you're in Japan, it's shrines and stuff like that. And there was this, I never even knew it existed, but you may have seen the picture on that I post on social media, the reclining Buddha. The thing was huge,
Yeah,
and the whole facility was huge and everything was. But it's a tourist area, and Buddhism is obviously very big in Japan, and all that. For me, it's kind of like, okay, well, whatever. It was a little warm that day, so we didn't want to spend too much time taking pictures in front of that thing, because it was just hot. But it was kind of interesting. For us, I think it's about seeing people and eating. Some of the food in those countries is really good. Even though I'm half Japanese, uh, my wife is Korean. I have to give her the nod in her homeland, as topping, my mother's homeland for, uh, for food overall, a variety of food.
Korean better than Japanese. You're saying?
Korean food there's more variety, and it's a lot cheaper. I mean, for heaven's sakes, I mean, we can go to dinner and have a decent meal, in Korea for like $8 a person.
Wow.
I mean, one that fills you up and everything. Remember, it's Korean food, and it's not going to be that's not going to be beef per se, but I mean, those are like noodle dishes and things like that, which are generally cheaper to make anyway. But we stayed at a hotel, in a different area of Seoul than we did last year, and we actually kind of liked it better because we went up the side street and found some places to eat. And there's this one place I really loved, and that's, you look around and it's like, I couldn't walked in this store, and it's basically a 24/7 self-operated ice cream store, ice cream and snack store. So I don't know when they stock that, but they've just got they've got freezers of ice cream, and they've got some snacks on the shelves. But you basically pick your own ice cream and scan it, pay for it, and then leave. There's nobody there. It's really kind of honest stuff. I don't know what happens if you run out of the store without paying, but you can get some ice cream for as low as 50 cents. It's like,
Wow.
ice cream on a stick, like kind of like almost like a Good Humor, but a little,
Yeah,
just maybe a tad smaller. I mean, where are you going to find that in the United States?
that's
For
right.
heaven's sakes? I went to, there was a McDonald's 2 blocks away, and I like to kind of check out McDonald's in foreign countries because sometimes they have a menu that's sometimes more specific to the country.
Mhm.
And they had one thing on the menu when I went down for breakfast. I can't remember what they listed it as. So, there was something about a happy something or other. Anyway, but it was chocolate filled churros. Okay,
Oh wow.
so I loved the churros that Costco used to sell. That they were awfully sugary, but these things were only about that big, and they would sell 3 of them to you for about $2.50. And when you compare, even if you wanted to get us an egg McMuffin in Korea, it would cost you about $2.50 or $3. That was it. The currency works in our favor, and so you wind up eating stuff that's a lot cheaper. I mean, we went to Costco in both countries, and the food was food was cheaper there a little bit, and different variety and stuff like that. So it's something to behold. The funny thing about this trip too, though, was I think was so one of the reasons we took this trip was I wound up with these what they call system-wide upgrades on American, and they're only good until March of 27. But they're the only kind of upgrades that you can take from any class of service, moving you all the way up to the top class of service. So anyway, but to play it safe, we bought premium economy, which is old business class, and then crossed our fingers that we would get upgraded. And we did both times. The second time was a little scary. The second time was right at the gate. But when we flew out of Dallas to Incheon, we were in the second section of business class. But on that flight was a flight attendant she was in the first part of the cabin, who had actually been our flight attendant a year ago.
Wow.
And my wife had conversations with her because my wife knits these dish scrubbies, and she gave them to her and some other people like that. So I think the flight attendant saw her first and then came to her later on, during the flight and everything like that. And they'd had a chat. When we flew back, we had another flight attendant who was also Korean, and in talking, my wife was doing the same thing. So this one knew the other one. The other one was very senior, and they were going to be flying together, I think, this past weekend and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like, so, I mean, to me, it's like, first of all, what are the odds, you're going to fly and have the same flight attendant on your flight, and then they remember you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they take really good care of you too. She gives out these scrubbies, and the next thing you know, they're like, "Oh, how about do you want some extra pajamas?" So it's American's 100th anniversary birthday, I guess. So they could do a lot of things. So I don't remember this on the first flight. I don't remember this last year for sure, but definitely not on the leg going to Korea. I don't remember seeing the pajamas, but this time they were definitely there. And I didn't put them on or anything like that. But right towards the end of the flight, I mean, the flight attendant was like, "Do you want some extra pajamas?" So we wound up with 4 pairs of pajamas. And then there's a little thing called gochujang sauce, which is a kind of a Korean hot paste, red paste that you can put on certain dishes. And so she noticed that I had set mine aside because to me, it's a little bit too hot for my taste at this point in time in my life. She and the other flight attendant gave us like a Ziploc bag full of stuff. Now, my wife's not quite sure what she's going to do with all that stuff because I think they came away with over 3 dozen of these little tubes. But
Wow.
it's funny how people treat you when you just do one little thing, how it multiplies along the
Yeah.
way.
Oh yeah. And my
So
daughter does that. She tells people, your shoes are nice, and like it just changes everything. It's like
yeah,
unbelievable the things that have happened.
yeah. I mean, I think we've lost that in today's society. A lot
Yeah.
of times is that we don't talk to other people and don't compliment them when
Yeah,
they
and
do
like
a good
it takes
compliment.
people by surprise. She's done it her whole life. She's done it since
Yeah,
she was like 2, and it takes people by surprise. They're like, huh? What? Oh, wow! Thank you. And I mean, the number of people who I've personally heard say that totally made my day is just incredible.
yeah.
You know,
It does
a real gift
change
for it.
it does change people when you compliment them like that because they're not
Yeah,
expecting it in today's day and age.
that's right.
So it was a good trip, but we get tired, and Japan actually one of the things that we look forward to of all things that oddly are uh, in 7-Eleven in Japan. They sell chocolate eclairs in a little plastic bag, on the shelf and everything like this, and they're cheap. They're really cheap, and they're really good because they're really loaded with custard. You can't find them anywhere else. I can't. They don't even. They have 7-Elevens in Korea, but they don't sell that in Korea. You know, so only in Japan can we get that. So every day I'm like going to buy like 2 or 3 of these things to have them so we can eat them. Just because it's like this is the only place we're going to get this thing.
Yeah,
It's just kind of upside down. I mean, we're my wife and I are just ridiculous Costco fans. We took my daughter-in-law with us to help us with some things, and because she was our kind of our interpreter in Japan with my cousins and whatnot. But I think we spent $35 each way on the cab ride to go to Costco. Now, how much money do you have to save to
right. Yeah,
justify that
to
at
make that
Costco?
dollar out. There's some other motivations at work there.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt. It's like I had never been to a Costco in Japan before. I now said could do it. I told my wife, like, you want to go to a Costco in Japan in the future? We need to stay closer to a
To the
Costco in
Costco,
Japan.
that's right. Look that up.
We visited 2 Costco's, in Korea, but the cab ride was like $10 or $12, right, each way. Much more reasonable. We got to that one in Japan. We're like, where the heck is this place? No wonder my cousin, when I mentioned it to her in an email, she was like, oh yeah, we can do that. But it's like we didn't realize that's like on the outskirts of Fukuoka, Japan, where we were. Not even anywhere really close to the city. We got a cab to take us there, and we were actually having a little trouble finding a cab to get us back. At first, I'm thinking like, oh great, we're going to be here waiting forever to get a cab to go back because nobody drives out here except the locals.
That's right.
Though we did meet a couple from Seattle in the Japan Costco. So, Costco is just like, it's a mecca. It's almost as popular as a shrine. All right. Anyway, moving on. So today is National Feel Like a Millionaire's Day. Do you ever feel like a millionaire?
Oh yeah, I feel like a millionaire. I feel like a king all the time. So I have people like I don't touch the laundry when I go anywhere now. Like my kid, my son's home for the summer, so he pulls up in the car. I get in the back right seat like El Presidente, and he drives wherever. Oh yeah, I feel like it absolutely.
Though I was thinking that it's like $1 million does not go as far as it used to.
No,
right?
no, it doesn't.
I
used to
don't know
think about like, what would you do with $1 million, right? In the old days, you say, okay, I put it in, some kind of long-term safe thing that gives me 6 or 8% a year that I live off of that. And like now it's, $60,000 to $80,000 a year. That's not, you've got to grow it more than that, right?
Yeah,
it's a different thing.
It's still more than the average person has, say, for retirement. When they do these studies,
messing around money, that's for sure. Yeah,
but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to last you for your entire life either. If you're not watching it, inflation and a lot of other things have eroded that. So I'm thinking like maybe they ought to change it to National Multimillionaires Day, because soon they may have to change it to National Billionaires Day, at some point in time, because the $1 million, it's a nice figure, but it just doesn't go as far as it used to.
That's right.
All right. So while I've been gone, I guess things like the Iran war still is clucking along here, but there's back and forth. Looking at so many different things. The Strait of Hormuz still basically, I guess, blocked and whatnot. And but anyway, once you catch me up on the viewpoint here from the U.S.
Well, Trump is prepared to finish the job, but he doesn't want to because he's carefully avoided killing run of the mill Iranians. There's a mistake or two here or there, as there always is in a big war effort like this. There's the people who are on the base, right, going to school on the base and got bombed. But so he's resisting blowing it to smithereens, right? Because he wants the country, like the day that they managed to get rid of the mullahs, he wants it to be able to snap back, right, and become immediately back into being a player on the world stage and so forth. And so the Middle East, I guess they were ready to attack Tuesday, and the UAE and Qatar and somebody else leaders asked him not to attack, to hold off a little bit. They think they're getting closer on negotiations. I think it's they're to the point where the Iranians got to do something about they pump all this oil and they don't have any place to they count on being able to ship it out of the country rather rapidly, and now they can't ship any oil out of the country. So their ability to absorb that oil that keeps pumping without being able to ship it out is rapidly winding down, which forces some issues. Either you cap those wells, which means that they will, if you bring them back at all, they're, 60% of previous capacity, or you burn them, which wastes the energy, or you got to build some more storage, which is kind of a longer term project than they're in a position to do, or you got to give in and let Trump win. So I think they are in a box, and I think they know they're in a box. And I think he is trying to do this with minimal extra damage to the country itself. And, it remains to be seen whether he'll be able to do that.
Yeah, my question here too, though, is just that we've been in this thing of roughly 82 days. I think this is beyond what even Trump had kind of said or promised. It's like, where are we on the horizon here? It's like, and at what point do we get to where we say this is beginning to look like a quagmire because we've just been there for so long? Where is the end to this thing?
Well, I think the end of this thing is when it starts, having a negative impact on the chances of the midterms. So far, Trump's come up complete roses on the midterms, and now I think for the Democrats to win the House, there's like 37 toss-up districts. There's 19 toss-up districts, and they'd have to win them all. They'd have to completely run the board, 19-0. And as you could tell last night, in the last couple of weeks, in fact, with the electoral results that have come in, the Democrats aren't going 19-0. The middle of the country, the battleground seats in the country are not oriented in a way that'll give the Democrats a 19-0. The weird thing about it is, like, Trump's at 43 today on Rasmussen. He's been in the lower 40s for a month and a half now, which is, the lower 40s is kind of dangerous, especially if it shows any sign of going lower. You get above 45, you're in pretty good shape on a poll like that, especially given the headwinds a candidate like that, office holder like that, is going to have. But the Democrats, are like 11%. So 43, not good, but 11, way worse. So, he's banking on, the structural changes of the various redistricting things that have happened, and the mood of voters to retain what he thinks retain both houses.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned these elections over the last couple of weeks, I mean, one goes back to your home state of Louisiana there with Cassidy. I don't know. I mean, what was your feelings about Cassidy to begin with? Did you like this guy?
No, he was like Massie. He wanted to come here and say, look at me, I'm important. I stand apart from Trump. It's like we don't, Trump won Louisiana by 32 points. Like we don't want people to stand apart from Trump, right? And if that's your pose, you're not really thinking what's best for America. You're thinking, about your pose, right? About where you want to be seen in the big thing. And he guessed wrong. All the people who think, that they can tap into conservative support and then turn around and crap on Trump are wrong, and it's getting proven every night. I think there's more people going to find out tonight.
There's something from Bob.
That's right. If he doesn't, they don't win the midterms, then it'll be a quagmire for 2 years. Because Congress might not pass a single bill.
Yeah,
I mean, pass them, but they'll get vetoed.
I know. You see, you're always ever the optimist about the Republican chances. I'm a little bit more unsure until I see the results, because I never know what Trump's going to do. He puts up this thing, and then all of a sudden, I'm not necessarily saying I was a big fan of Cassidy or Thomas Massie by any stretch of imagination. If you're going to take out candidates, you take them out in safe places.
Those are both safe places.
Yeah, but if you start getting involved where it's a little dicier and start messing around where things are a little dicier, then you cloud the results of what may happen here in the future. Okay, so here's Bob's feelings.
Yeah, that's right.
That's true. I mean, this is very true too, because Cassidy and Kennedy are like polar opposites to me.
Right, that's right. Kennedy is completely with the program, and Cassidy is opposed to it, right? And it's like how do you win elections? You have to stay fairly close to your voters, right? And he didn't do that. Massie didn't do that. Massie got on this campaign to embarrass Trump over Israel and whatnot. And the country is not Jew hater. That's not a popular. All the people that are trying to make a Jew hater section of the Republican Party, and I guess the Democrats have all decided at this point to be Jew haters. It's not successful politically. The country doesn't buy it.
I mean,
that's one where you get people get confused. The noise on X and Fox News and CNN and MSNOW or whatever it is now. They confuse that for the actual feelings of the American populace, and every once in a while, people get corrected, and this is one of those.
Yeah, once again, it's Trump. Trump has this incredible grip on the GOP and his influence with this. It's remarkable how he's able to sway things. We think about all the other candidates who've lost, their reelection bids in the past for opposing him. He has largely eviscerated those that have not been loyal to him. You've even got Lauren Boebert, I guess, is trying to get back into his good graces and whatnot. I mean, I think the filing deadline is well past, so it's not like anybody's really going to be able to challenge her and take her on unless it's in a write-in capacity or something like that. But it's kind of I think he's put the fear of God into some of these people, saying we know we may not really agree with him, but if we don't stick with them, our political future is history.
That's right.
There's another one.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's like the things that they're for are not practical. It's never going to happen, right? We're not going to eliminate the IRS. Be nice, but it's not going to happen, right? So you go around saying, I'm going to build my political career on trying to eliminate the IRS. It's like and the party's stupid for not going along with me. And it's like, that's not how this works. And it's not how it's going to work. It's like Massie never got anything done in Congress. Like the Pauls, Rand and Ron, he's been on the losing end of more, 90% votes than anybody in Congress, right? Like, he's lost by 400 votes all the time. Even the Democrats vote against him. So, it's like the guy standing over here doing the thing on his own. Sometimes, you have to be able to recognize that sometimes he's right and all the other people are wrong. But if your purpose in life is to be the guy standing over here by himself, then there's a chance that the things you use to make that point are not going to work out for you, right? And then that's the case with Massie.
Yeah, I mean, does Rand Paul, and will he feel a little more isolated after this too, though? I mean, once again,
Yeah,
with
especially
Trump,
with a pro-Trumper winning the McConnell seat last night, or with the Republican primary. For the most pro-Trump candidate in that race won easily. The second most Trump candidate was, I guess, he was given an ambassadorship, and the guy who was trying to be McConnell and standoffish from Trump finished with 25% of the vote or something.
oh yeah,
Lost badly.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too about this is just that it wasn't that these guys just lost close races. They didn't lose close races. The races weren't even close.
Right. They got hammered over. And that's really, no one knows who Ed Gallerin is or what the heck he plans to vote for or do in Washington. And no one even cares, right? It was a referendum on Massie and he lost, 54-45.
Yeah. That's a telling remark when you can do that.
People in Georgia about to learn the same lesson. Right, they're tired of the Raffensperger, Brian Kemp wing of the party, and those guys are about to find themselves in a lot of trouble.
Well, the question once they get past that initial primary and head to the general election, though, for a guy like Georgia, is that are the Democrats beatable at this point in time? I mean, because they kind of have taken control a little bit. Are they vulnerable enough that a Republican can actually beat them? Can a non-Brian Kemp Republican beat them? We look at these very former popular governor types. I mean, Kemp fits. Kemp or like a Steve Ducey. Was it Doug Ducey, Arizona?
Doug Dooley, the football coach. Yeah.
No, well, I'm talking about back to Arizona. What's the guy's name?
Ducey? Ducey. Yeah, right? David Ducey.
I mean, they wanted him to run, and he didn't. He deferred and all this stuff like that. But you have all these things where you've got these high-profile guys that decide no. Matter of fact, I don't know if you saw this thing about my former governor Larry Hogan, who's basically like, I'm done.
Yeah, I didn't see
He's
that.
like, I'm done running for political office. And he's now setting up something at Washington College on the Eastern Shore. It's a small little college, nice little college.
Was there the other day.
But he's done doing this thing, and
that's another guy who the party left him. The things he was for, and I understand there's the political reality of Maryland's a little different than what a lot of these other people are dealing with, but he could not get on the Trump train, and okay, I get that, right? He cannot go around Maryland saying how pro-Trump he is. The guy, Dan, what's his name, that was from Frederick, who ran the next time, I can't even remember his name.
Dan Cox.
Yeah, he tried that and he got crushed, right? So,
and he's running again.
Yeah, but Hogan then interpreted that as a mandate to go out of his way to thwart Trump, to thumb his nose at Trump, right? And the electorate was not in line with that either. People got to realize that, if you're looking at, you said, Trump's stuck at 43, you're looking at the wrong stat, right? Because it's Trump v somebody else, and the v person ain't 43. They're 19 or 11 or 12 or something. So, it's a lot, he's in a lot stronger position, especially when you consider all these states are cleaning out voter rolls, right? Which they didn't have to do before. So, there's no more sending a bunch of ballots somewhere and, they claim to be some 170-year-old person and vote, right? Because they're cleaning all that out. The voter registration has turned sharply in favor of the Republicans. North Carolina is going to be a Republican-dominated, Republican majority state in terms of the electorate for the first time ever in 2026. Pennsylvania went from about 2.5 million plus for Democrats to it's down at about 55 or 60,000 now. So, all those people have switched, and not all of them become Republicans, but a lot of them have become Republicans. The Republicans are net plus in almost every state in the country. And the ones are not, it's because of localized elections, like mayor of Philadelphia got a lot of Democrats to register so they could vote in that. So that kind of thing. So, when you say, yeah, it doesn't look that likely that all this will happen, I don't know that it'll happen, but there's a lot more signs pointing toward it than people realize.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting to see how this is all kind of developing along the way. But you mentioned these ballots and cleaning up the rolls, and we're getting into early voting, and for a lot of these primaries and things like that. And we know we talk about it, and we'll continue to talk about that as this year rolls along. But you may have seen this snafu in Maryland, where the vendor apparently sent people the wrong ballot for this upcoming primary. And so I got an email notification that my ballot, they're going to send me a new one. And this is, you need to destroy your old ballot. And I'm like, okay, so, I'm not going to be conspiratorial about this, or at least not try to be, but they're telling people that you may have received the wrong ballot, and that ballot you have will now be, I guess, invalid. So you need to destroy it. Now, is everybody going to destroy their ballot?
Yeah, are they really gonna? Is that machine reader? Does it say, "Hey, this one's invalid"?
Right. Yeah. This is what I need to look at. It's like, I think all the ballots have got, there's the barcodes or whatever like that. So I'm assuming that the state of Maryland and this, is basically saying, they're basically, for anybody that, when they remail it, all the old barcodes or whatever are cleared out of the system. They're becoming invalid. If any of those bad ballots come back, they're going to be rejected. Now, there's also the possibility that some people won't notice. I mean, they'll vote. They just don't, and they think they had a vote in something. They may have actually gotten a correct ballot, but Maryland went overboard and said you may not have had one. I have one, the guy that came in during the time I was gone. I didn't even open it up to see if it was the correct ballot yet. I meant to do that before the show. But if I had gotten the correct ballot and then I'm going to get another ballot, then I need to destroy the correct ballot, the original correct ballots, and vote only the second ballot. It seems like a mess. It just seems like a mess.
Seems like
and it just opens the door to a lot of things where, if you want to talk about election fraud possibilities, this year will be the year to do it because of the snafu. Maryland is going to probably bend over backwards to try to dissuade people from saying there's any chicanery going on here. But they already started this whole thing by goofing up the process. So I don't know. I mean, and I know enough people, in Maryland who are like, okay, this is trouble. We already got trouble, and all this kind of stuff.
That's right.
But yeah, when you mentioned Dan Cox, I'm like, I see him running some commercials, and I'm like, we can't get rid of this guy. Not that Maryland's got really anybody really credible to run for governor or as a Republican ticket, but it's like, can I not get rid of this guy?
Well, I mean, you may not have a better option.
I know. It's sad though. It's just like, I just see. I don't know if I could actually even vote for him. I don't know if I can even mark that on my ballot because I just don't. I think he's just a lunatic. So, but I know plenty of people think he's great, but I would have the hardest time. And I have voted for president for Republican presidents. I'm not crazy about, but for governor, I don't know. I think just because for whatever reason, I think I don't see the outcome being very good anyway for Republicans this coming election. So, I may just abstain and just not vote for that particular office because, if he winds up being the nominee, I just don't know if I can handle it.
Well, who else is running?
That's right. There's 2 or 3 other guys, I think, like that. And none of them, I don't know if any of them are getting much traction at this point in time. So, I have a feeling that Cox will emerge as the front runner and the winner and the nominee, but maybe one of these other guys gets a real rush and then is able to do something. I don't know. Republicans in Maryland, what I find always is interesting is just that the amount of time when I peek in on Nextdoor, which is supposed to really be about kind of community issues and stuff like that, but and how liberal our county is, so that also will reflect on, the people on next door. I mean, whatever the population is and their makeup is going to be largely reflected on next door too. And when sometimes they delve into some politics, which I don't think the moderators like that much, but there's this overwhelming sense of, I'm tired of the liberals and taxes in Montgomery County, and I'm
Yeah.
astonished, to be honest.
Yeah.
That
I'm thinking like if you could get a sane person, is Parrott, is he in this? Craig Parrott?
Neil Parrott.
Neil Parrott.
Yeah, Neil Parrott. I mean, he's not in Montgomery County though. He lives.
No, I'm saying and for governor.
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know what Neil is.
He's sane. I think and he's had some success.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't win, but he came very close to winning, closer than a lot of these other guys come.
Yeah, I don't know if
like
Neil was running
a regular guy.
I think he just got appointed to some commissioner position up in Western Maryland or something like that, and he may be biding his time for another opening at something or other. I don't know. Yeah, Neil has not been able to crack, through there yet. The races this year, Montgomery County might be interesting. We got one guy running in CD6 who I like a lot. He's a retired, Marine JAG guy. He's very well spoken, smart guy. He married a woman from West Africa. He's got a darling family. He's done not always talking about the campaign stuff, but he does frequently get on some of the lesser conservative cable kind of channels to talk about the stuff in Iran, because he has been deployed before, so he kind of know he's been a boots on the ground kind of a guy, so he's seen the situation, so he has some expertise and everything like that. So I like him a lot. I don't know if he can cut through with everything, and then you got to face the whole, it's a David Trone or April, Delaney kind of a thing like that. So I don't know. There's a lot of money, even if you win the primary, that the Democrats can throw a ton of money at you. So that's going to be problematic in and of itself. Anyway, so yeah, that was it's just kind of, so then the other thing that comes out of all of this stuff is that, Trump has now decided to endorse Ken Paxton over John Cornyn. Okay. All right. I'm not a huge John Cornyn fan, but I just think that Ken Paxton is ethically challenged, has got a lot of problems, can be vulnerable, and gives the Democrats a little bit of an opening.
Yeah, I think that the safe play was Cornyn, right? Yeah. Nobody loves him, but you're not going to, no big scandal is going to break, and, no phone calls are going to get turned over, or tapes or videos or whatever. You don't have to worry about any of that. You're going to get what you're going to get. And at some point, they're going to play enough, tapes of Tallarico saying that Jesus is non-binary to where he can't win in Texas. Right. So, I mean, you kind of know that, right? But with Paxton, you really could get in a thing where he's so corrupt, he gets caught doing, you don't know that he's been caught doing everything he's going to be caught doing, right? He could be caught again in the time between now and November. And then where would you be? Like, oh, here's another scandal, it's even worse than all these others. So I didn't really understand that. I think Trump might be, feeling his oats a little bit, after Massie and after Cassidy. And, I think his nominees, the people, his endorsees last night went something like 19-0 all over the country. So he's like a little cocky, right? My endorsements are back to where they're the gold standard, and so he may be putting that to the test here, because, I don't know that, I'm a little dicey on that decision.
Yeah. I'm glad
like you, I'm not thrilled about either one of them, but I thought Cornyn was the safe play.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean,
right.
It's definitely that way. I mean, this become, if this happens, which I would think that it would not happen, but it gives hope to the Democrats, by this endorsement that Paxton might have a path to the Senate, to that whole Senate race, and gives them an opening that maybe they can flip this seat. This is an unforced error. You had a pretty solid guy and a safe guy. It's just,
and a member of leadership. He's not a backbencher who doesn't get anything done,
Right. But you definitely have Paxton with all these skeletons in his closet, and you're endorsing him like this. It's like, I don't know. Maybe just because Trump has had a lot of skeletons in his closet, he can relate to the guy.
One of the points I was going to make is adultery used to be a career killer in politics. So you're caught cheating, you're out. You cannot win. You can't be dog catcher anymore, right? But that's kind of gone away. It was, I guess Clinton got away with it massively, but it's sort of not. It's not the dreadnought it used to be. Other thing is, there's Republicans have a huge money advantage, so the guy will be fighting uphill, and I just can't believe he's electable. Tallarico is even remotely electable in a state like Texas that has men. I don't see it. So I don't know. I don't know about that. It may be impossible to maybe a mistake that it's impossible to make. But yeah, I was a little frightening. When I saw that too, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, he could just have stayed out of it and just let it roll.
Exactly.
Right.
That's right. And the funniest part is, like, you're seeing the Democrats are like, guess what, buddy? So now you have Tom Tillis and Cornyn and Cassidy. It's three guys in the Senate who can just vote against you at will now because, they're out either way. So they can just torment you for the rest of the year. And it's like, those guys weren't giving us anything anyway, right? You got the Save America Act up there to clean up voting. One bill. All you got to do is put it on the floor, make Democrats vote against something that 80% of the country wants, right? And smear them with it, but they refuse to do it. So, this thing that we no longer have the cooperation of the Republicans in the Senate. You didn't have the cooperation of the Republicans in the Senate before. So if Cornyn would have delivered on what he was supposed to deliver on for Trump, and he said, well, I'm a co-sponsor of the bill. Okay, well, why isn't it over if the Senate majority leader? The Senate. What is he? Senate majority. He's the whip. What is Cornyn? He's number 2 guy, right?
Yeah.
The majority leader's Thune. So, if you're the whip and you're a co-sponsor of a bill and you can't even get that bill onto the floor, it doesn't look like we don't see a lot of effort being expended on it. Then, the people spoke pretty clearly on clean up elections, especially the people who voted for you, Mr. Republican Senator. They were pretty clear, go in there and clean up elections. And you didn't do it. You dragged your feet. You said there are political considerations. You had a whole lot of good reasons, but the voters wanted something and you didn't deliver it to them. And now there's a price to pay.
And just check that. He is the former whip. I don't know who he was up from 2013 to 2019.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's kind of blended in with all the other stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's yes. Not a good thing.
No, and I love it. I love how Bob's just talking about clowns, because this is part of the problem, is that America elects way too many clowns to public office, and whether or not that's on a national scale or on a local scale, we get clowns. And it's like, and when you do that, if they win office and they take office, it's like, you get what you deserve, in this case, if you voted for this clown, then you deserve that then. So
there's only the guys, if you think about the people who are in politics, that either, they see criticism as a badge of honor or they see it as beneath them. Right. And there's nothing in between, so it's like, you have these guys that like, Massie lives for the criticism, right? His whole shtick was based on the criticism that he got for his stance, and then you have people, like Trump, and he doesn't really care what you think, and that's your two models of politics in the country. And if you get too far away from the voters on either side, that's what you end up with.
Yeah. All right. One other thing I want, just along the election side there too. One of the things that happened was that Virginia got rebuffed by the Supreme Court on their redistricting, which I'm very pleased with. That they got held accountable for just doing something that was just bad.
Well, you're supposed to do it where if you're going to propose a constitutional amendment. Okay, so the story of Virginia is it was decided by the congressional delegation up to about 4 or 5 years ago when they passed a constitutional amendment through 2 sessions of the legislature, which is required to make a commission to create the districts. Okay, so you end up with 6-5, which is if you consider the Senate is 21-19 and the House is 51-49 Democrat, then 6-5 is the appropriate congressional representation. People think of Virginia as like California or Washington State. No, it's barely Democrat. They barely win. So they scrape by, right? And in the case like Spenberger, she ran against an awful candidate. So you just can't, there's just nothing you can do sometimes. So they did not. They decided, we're going to vote to break the rules, and then we're going to vote that it's okay to break the rules, and then we're going to break the rules, and then they put the amendment up there illegally. The language of the amendment, it said to restore fairness. It's like, no, fairness is 6-5 when the Senate is 21-19 and the House is 51-49. That's fairness. Right? What you're doing is restoring supremacy for the Democrat Party. So people saw through it, and it was a closer election than the presidential election, but they did pass it, and they didn't follow any of the procedures they were supposed to follow. So now they have to pay a price. The courts came along and said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put up with it. And then they appealed to the Supreme Court. And I was a little worried about that because there was a plebiscite. There was an election, and it did win the election, like it or not. So I was worried the court would say, hey, the people spoke here, right? And then that carries some weight too. But they didn't even agree to hear the case. So, and all 9 were on that one. It was 9-0. So even Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's becoming, you were talking about clowns, is really distinguishing herself with her presence on the court in a most unusual way. So, and then so it's by the boards now, and that's a pickup of 4 seats for the Democrats. Florida went and added 6 seats. Virginia, South Carolina House yesterday or last night in the wee hours of the morning passed a map that eliminates the 1 Democrat district there. Now it goes to the Senate where it's uncertain whether it will pass. And these things marching on. Alabama redistrict out 1, but not both of its majority black seats or whatever. Mississippi, this House has passed a map, but the Senate hasn't, that would eliminate. They say, that's another one. Mississippi, and maybe Bob probably weigh in on this, but the district Benny Thompson holds, you're going to have to slice that one pretty carefully to make sure a Democrat can't win that. Because, if you look at like the part of Mississippi that borders Louisiana and that borders Arkansas, the far western parts of Mississippi, that's the Delta. And that's some of the poorest counties in the country. And the Louisiana parishes across from it are some of the poorest in the country. That's a Democrat stronghold. Vicksburg, that part of the world, is a Democrat stronghold. And I don't know, you're going to have to slice it apart pretty carefully to make sure that a Democrat can't win it.
Yeah, look, I'm sick and tired of gerrymandering, no matter which party does it. Elections do have consequences, so that's going to be part of the whole. That you win, you get to take that prize.
Pick
and
your
do
voters.
whatever.
That's right.
Yeah, but
see, my thing is like we can work all that out, but like if the rules allow you to gerrymander, then when you're in power, you absolutely should gerrymander. It's an expression of the people's power.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it, and the thing about it though is just that the Democrats kind of have this, they feign that we don't like gerrymandering, so we want these independent commissions, right? Or you got Eric Holder with his his whole big push and all this stuff like that, which is a crock because
Right.
Virginia, California, these Democrat areas will have these independent commissions. I mean, what did California do? They're basically saying we're going to suspend the commission so we can go fix this map, against the Republicans more so than it already is, and then we'll let it. Then it'll just gonna then it'll come back, and then everything will be fine and dandy, so that we can fight Trump on this kind of thing like this. Like, no, but either are you for the independent commission to help draw these maps for which sometimes whether or not they're really that independent is a whole other, that's another issue there too. But Eric Holder and what he does, I mean, it's such a crock in terms of what they say, because Democrats always talk about disenfranchisement. Obviously they felt that word came out a lot after the whole Voting Rights Act ruling, this Calais ruling. It's like, I'm sorry, it's like the
Zero people were disenfranchised.
Yeah, I mean, who's really being disenfranchised here? And I'm really sick and tired of this, how the world has been, where you think you have to, 10% of the population is black or 10% of Hispanic, and so therefore 10% of your congressional representation must be this, 10% of your police force must be this. I'm like, where it ever happened to merit?
Yeah, color blindness.
Right.
That's the thing. Like I always tell people, one of the worst things that happened in this country was Dr. King getting assassinated, because he was trying, his thing was stop the racial set-asides, make us all one people. We all march to the same drummer, right? Like we're, what's good for some of us is good for all of us, right? And so, but we stopped, that momentum kind of stopped with him. And then you had people like Obama that reversed it. That said, we're disadvantaged because of the color of our skin, and you owe us. You got to fix us up.
Was it Shelby Steele that wrote a book about the content of our character and not the color of our skin, kind of thing like this years ago? I was like, and that's kind of echoing, Martin Luther King. I mean, that's basically this. Is like, it should be on who we are and not our skin color.
Right.
None of us. Skin color should not give us an advantage, and special preferences.
It shouldn't work for us or against us. It just doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, look, I mean, I learned that, when my kids were in school, that if we classified them as like Asian or whatever, they got looked at differently in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, look, we went from Caucasian to Asian. They're getting preferences potentially.
Yeah.
It's like, this is stupid.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is like, you can say, okay, it was advantaged against black people during Jim Crow or whatever. Okay, what is the remedy for that? The remedy is to stop advantaging it against black people. Right? Stop that. That's wrong. Okay. It's not to advantage it in favor of them. Right? That's you're still doing the bad thing. You're still committing the sin. It's like adultery. It's like, well, if I go to another woman, it won't be as bad. No. It's not the point of this woman, right? It's like, she ain't your wife. Whichever other woman is not your wife, it's the same crime.
All right. Last thing.
What is he talking about?
All right. Last thing I want from you before we go here, before we wrap up with a couple other things here, is that tell me why this settlement, this Trump versus Trump kind of settlement with the DOJ, isn't anything but basically a big slush fund for the administration. Well, is it legal? Is it really?
Well, I think he dropped it. So, and I don't think.
Well, I mean, but the money, there's still, there's still going to be this $1.76 billion fund out there. I mean, he dropped.
Oh, for the J6 defendants. Yeah, I think we get off easy with that, and I think that if you can get all those people paid for the wrong done to them for $1.76 billion, you'll have actually done pretty good. Because it's a lot of people who were wronged A lot of people went to prison for years over that Section 1512, which wasn't even constitutional. A lot of people spent years in solitary confinement over this. Yeah, I think I think that's it looks like a big line item, in the interim. But if you can get all those people to settle for that and not sue the government, I think it will be a huge savings.
I'm just saying, I mean, this is a weird situation because, this is basically Trump playing both sides of the coin here, because, he had a suit against the Justice Department, and he comes out of this thing with, where they set up this fund. Todd Blanche is going to oversee and pick the commissioners, I guess, on this commission or whatever to decide this. And if they don't like it, they can fire them. So it's still got under Trump control. Trump then gets, the agreement right now, I guess, says that, they're supposed to drop any and all investigations on audits and or returns and all this kind of stuff. I don't know whether or not there's going to be any more legal challenges to this. I don't necessarily blame the Democrats for howling about this. I don't know if they can do anything about this, but it's just an odd thing to see to happen. You've got a lot of things going on here. I don't really think we needed to do this right now. In an election year, midterm election, maybe you do it in 2027 and people aren't paying as much attention, but it does become more cannon fodder for the Democrats. And I'll let the legal experts figure this out at this point in time, but it's kind of like Trump the citizen versus Trump the president, and Trump the president says, we're going to do this, and everybody says, fine, because it's his Justice Department, and they go and do this. I don't know. I on the surface, I think it has some issues that need to be resolved, and legally, who knows? I'm not.
I think some people got legally wronged, and you got to address that too.
Well, yeah, I mean, they could. There's ways of doing that, and I just don't know that you need $1.76 billion in a fund that Trump has basically made all these demands and has all these things where he gets exonerated in essence for a lot of stuff too at the same point in time. Anyway, so I just was kind of curious more than anything else. And we're at just the beginning of this. We don't know all how this is really going to work because it is just the beginning stage. And Todd Blanche is trying to defend this, on the Hill. So we may learn more as this goes along. All right, we're wrapping this up, and this wrap up is really because of people just recently passed away. Ted Turner, Bobby Cox, and I just saw Barney Frank pass away. Having Ted Turner and Bobby Cox pass away very close to each other. I mean,
that was kind of strange, wasn't it?
It was very strange. And they're two icons.
It's like the Braves brain trust.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah, no. I mean, Ted Turner, for all his issues, and everything, conservatives who had issues with him and everything like this, I'll go back to, a story that my father had, connections with him that developed in a way that we never expected it to. And so my father was, he was known to go to shareholders meetings of these media companies, and Turner Broadcasting was a publicly held company, and we held a few shares. So my father trudged on down to Atlanta one year and had his give and take with Ted, and Ted was pretty fair. And he asked him after the thing was over, he asked Ted, he says, hey, would you come to the Conservative Leadership Conference and speak? So that was an event that took place in November. And the shareholders meetings usually are done by June. And Ted goes, he says, my schedule's all busy, I'm booked up, but talk to me next year. Now, if you hear that from somebody, isn't your reaction like, okay, he just brushed me off.
I just got blown off. Yeah.
Right. So my father goes back the next year. So that was this is like 1990, goes to 1991, I guess. And they have their convo and whatever during the shareholders meeting. And Ted Turner comes to my father and says, how about that conference you asked me to speak to last year? And wow. My father, I think, was kind of startled, and he said, sure, we'd love to have you. So Ted Turner actually came to that conference in November of that year. He was married to Jane. So Jane was on his arm. They came walking into the Crystal City Marriott. I guess it was Crystal. I think it was a Crystal City Marriott we used at that time. And they came walking in there, And I remember Bernard Shaw was in the audience. I'm sure there was at least one or two other CNN people in there, but there was also a guy named John Holman, I think, and he actually went through the exhibit hall and did a whole spiel on the exhibit hall, which is like CLC was a small little operation between Morton, Blackwell, Paul Weyrich, and my father, so it was never very big. But that was like the biggest thing we'd had. It's like we get Ted Turner. Ted Turner had a very short speech. It wasn't all that interesting, but he did take Q&A. It's out there on the record. On C-SPAN covered it, and it's like, it's out there. So I say, Ted, there are moments where people like that, kind of like Sam Donaldson too, with all the things.
Yeah, Sam Donaldson.
We hate Sam.
He did something for MRC. He did a conference.
Look, Sam was willing to go and get quizzed and have epithets hurled at him by conservatives. You're not such a bad guy if you're willing to face these guys, right?
That's right.
He didn't run away; he ran into it.
That's
so
right.
Good for types like
good
that.
For and good for Ted.
Yeah, right.
He revolutionized our business.
Well, look. I don't know where would cable news be without Ted Turner. I don't know if there's anybody that was as visionary as Ted Turner. He started that thing. His network winds up being, the third, a laggard now in the whole field, but he cleared the path for the Foxes, for MSNBC or MSN Now. Anybody else that wants to compete, the whole cable news business was Ted Turner.
He also cleared. People don't think about this, but he also cleared the path for Ion Network and Food Network and all that stuff. That the 300 channels on your TV now, because no one had ever tried anything like WTBS before.
Right.
I'm just going to offer my own mix of stuff and see what happens against the networks and all that. I mean, he was revolutionary in a lot of ways, and a very smart guy. And he had a commie for a wife. There's nothing you can say about it. Towering figure in the sports world as well. So a lot to talk about there. Bobby Cox, he won 14 straight division titles and one World Series, and of course the complaint was he couldn't win the big one, but it's like there's a lot of big ones if you're winning 14 division titles, right? And I talked about this before, but when Gary Williams was at Maryland, they got knocked out of the tournament like in the first round by St. John's one year, 3-2 zone. They just couldn't figure out what to do, and so I wrote a column. I was at the Montgomery Journal at the time, and I said, if you want to keep finishing fourth place behind Duke and North Carolina and whoever every year and be an afterthought, Gary's your guy. But if you want to ever actually reach for the top rung of the ladder, you need to think about making a change. And so, of course, like 2 or 3 years later, they won the national championship. My phone was blowing up. You idiot. And it's like, okay, which is fair. So it was the same. It's the same kind of thing, though. It's like he kept you near the top with a chance to win all the time, and also his players loved him. Right? He did this, and his players loved it. He got thrown out of exactly 162 games, so exactly one baseball season worth of games he was ejected from in his career. And finally, you mentioned Barney Frank. Okay, so I worked on the Hill when Barney Frank was up there, and I got to know him a little bit. And a lot of the Democrats were really jerks. And he was, like you say, he was willing to engage and talk and can we improve my idea, right? In a way that a lot of those people were not. And so, I remember one day it was a hot sunny day and he had all these boxes he was trying to carry. And I ended up hee-hoing 2 of his big boxes to his office for him. And put them down. And he knew I worked for Tom Davis, the other side and whatnot. But he was a good guy. You could talk to him a little bit. I had to deal with John Lewis. He was a complete jerk. And didn't have any clue what he was doing up there. And he's a great civil rights leader. But, John Lewis is what's wrong with Congress. And Barney Frank, who I don't really agree on much politically, tried to be what was right about Congress.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to say one thing about Bobby Cox here briefly. Hopefully, Bobby Cox was really largely the reason that I became a Braves fan. I mean, I like the Nationals and everything like that, but I became a Braves fan because of Bobby Cox and those teams that he had. Right, Chipper Jones, Dale Murphy, Javi
Yeah.
Lopez, Darrell Evans, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz, Greg Maddux, all these great players. You just a plethora of these great players, and that's why they won all those titles. Yeah. So you win one World Series. It's not easy to win a World Series and get.
No, it's not.
There's just so many factors and everything like that. But what a great manager, and getting thrown out of games is always kind of a side thing for him, because I think about Earl Weaver and his antics and everything like that, and it's fine. I love it. I think it adds. I think it's part of the game. It's part of the flavor.
Part of the game.
And the passion of Bobby Cox. So, yeah, we Georgia
Like
lost.
the people who don't want hockey fights. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I mean, and to think that Ted Turner basically kind of, he moved on from the whole media thing, into his bison burgers and a lot of other things. And I will say about the commie Jane Fonda, though, it's like you do remember that she was out there in the stands and she was doing the tomahawk chop.
That's
with
right.
Ted.
That's right.
So this is someone who's that's a very politically incorrect thing to do.
It really
he's out
is.
there doing it. So anyway, all right, everybody, thank you for joining us today. Hope you are. Please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.